This video was cut from a longer video where I did every maintenance activity in the manual. If you want to check that one out, link up top, link in the description. Make sure the motor is stable. It's not going to fall over on you while you work. It's best just to run the system dry while you're in the water in a bucket, but if you need to drain the gas line, make sure it's away from any kind of incandescent lighting or heat source, and make sure that the trim on the motor is locked. You don't want it tilting down into position while you've got your fingers under there. Enjoy the video. Here's the carb. I'm thinking these two bolts are what is primarily holding this carb on. So what I'm going to do is pull this line, the gas line. There's a compression fitting here. I'm going to take that compression fitting off, and then I'm going to take these bolts out. This should slide off when I remove the throttle linkage. Here's the throttle linkage where it attaches. Pull that bolt off, that bolt off. Take airline off, take the airline off here, then this should come right off. Let's start tearing it down and see. It's going to be an adventure, but it's okay. First thing, gas line. All right, gas line is off. There's a vacuum tube or something right there. That's overflow flood. Okay, so when it floods, I think this directs the gas out versus into the motor. So honestly, that can stay on right now because this is not really attached to anything. It's just sticking out the bottom of the motor. How does that come off? I think it pops right out. Oh man. All right. There's the throttle linkage. It was attached to right in that slot, right there. As you can see, that moves with the throttle. So the best thing I found, give it about half throttle. It'll make it perpendicular and you can push it right through. All right, so we've got the airline, fuel line, airline off. We've got the throttle linkage off. We've got this vacuum, or this tube here that I think's for flood overflow. Now, I'm just going to get these bolts off. 2 bolts. That's all I see. One. 2. Be careful. There are bushings in there that come out. This is the little breather box where the airline attaches. There's the choke. There's choke, throttle. There's the, that's what I was missing. Leave this in there until you get the carb off, and then you can just turn it and it comes right out. These tubes. Oh my goodness. Got it. Watch that. Little gasket there. All right. So here's the carb. Choke, throttle. See the throttle valve in there. Bowl drain. There's a screw under that cap for your fuel air mixture. I think that is the idle jet is in there. That's what I'm really interested in, is that guy, because I'm having a hard time cold starting. Let's get these screws out, get the bowl off, and we'll get some carb cleaner in here. Here's the main jet. With these jets, because they're brass and they will strip out if you don't have the right size Phillips head. There we go. Just the plug. All right, let's get this other one off. Here's the idle jet. All right, so now I'm going to soak this guy in some carb cleaner. Just let it soak and then spray it again. Let that sit in that bowl, those two jets. I'm going to take this outside and just spray everything down as best I can. Be back. Right. And spraying it, make sure you get in that idle jet port right there. It'll blow back up through the main jet and through the throttle chamber. So everything's sprayed down really good. I'm going to let it sit overnight and then come back tomorrow, put it back together and see how she runs. The jets, they soaked overnight. I sprayed out the carb again, cleaned out the bowl again with carb cleaner. Ready to put this guy back on, so wish me luck. All right, first, I'm gonna put the jets back on. The longer one's the idle jet. Goes in that port right there. You just want to snug these down. They're brass, so they will strip out easy on you. You're gonna get it snug in there. Now, your main jet. Inside the bowl. Just snug it down in that main port. Now it's time for the bowl. Watch the gasket. Sometimes it'll come out on you. Make sure there's no dirt or contamination around that gasket. If you get a rebuild kit, you get a new gasket with it. It's always a good idea. Spend a little extra money and get a rebuild kit. All right, you also want to be careful. There's another gasket on the outlet side of the carb. This plastic gasket here, this plastic spacer / gasket goes there. We've got 3 gaskets on the outlet side that you got to be careful. You got a gasket on the outlet of the carb, and then you got a gasket on the motor side, and then that plastic spacer. So don't lose any 3 of those. Got this little breather box. Remember, this little breather box goes on the inlet side of the carb. These 2 bolts go through here. You got brass bushings that are loose in that little box. Those will fall out and you will lose those. So be careful there. Get the bolts in through there. Get the bolts through your carb. So now the carb is ready to fit back in place. First, I'm going to attach the choke linkage because it's easier to go in, bend down, done. Choke linkage. Now I can put the plastic spacer on. And then now line up the holes and I can screw it in. drain slash vacuum tubes, whatever they are. Make sure they get routed back down. Out the bottom. They literally come out the bottom of the motor. Now gas line. Hook the gas line back into the inlet of the carb. Air line, secure the air intake line. Check the choke. That looks really good. Throttle linkage, almost forgot about that guy. Give it half throttle, that'll position everything. We'll go into the carb side first. Oh, I forgot which way this goes. I should have took a picture. Got it on video. I don't want to go back and try to find it in the video. We're gonna figure it out. All right, so it looks like this side is gonna go in the carb. Got it. Woo! All right, so there. This is what it looks like with that linkage on. I was having a problem getting it seated there. You definitely want to put it in the carb side first. That throttle valve there. And then you can kind of semi-force it in that channel that's controlled by your tiller handle. I think you can take that hex head off, make it a little bit easier, but I was able to get it to fit in that channel. So we got the gas line hooked back up. We got the air intake line hooked back up. We got the, I think, flood overflow in. That's hooked up, routed out the bottom. It's another vacuum tube, I believe, or flood overflow on the back side that's routed through the bottom. Throttle linkage is back on. Really important, the choke linkage is back on. Put that on before you bolt it down. It makes it super easy for that one. Double check that everything is moving. There's choke. Throttle. Choke is supposed to, choke engages with the throttle valve. That's good. Throttle all the way open. That's good. I think everything is good. All right. I sure hope that she starts after taking the carb off. I did notice one issue. The bowl of the carb can go two different ways. And it can bolt up two different ways, and the screw holes still line up. I think I put it on backwards, so hopefully it doesn't cause a problem. It looks like that gasket is symmetrical, so it doesn't matter. The only issue is the drain plug on the carb now is facing inward towards the motor where I can't get to it. So I'm going to try to start it once I get everything put back together, and hopefully it doesn't cause any problems. Hopefully it doesn't leak. I'll keep an eye out for that. But next time I clean it out, I'll remember to move that back over. So we'll get it all back together and see if she'll start. I'm going to change the lower end unit gear oil. Do that every 100 hours. Do this once a season, definitely before you store it for the winter. Sometimes if you have a bad seal, water will get in your oil in the lower end unit, and when it freezes over the winter, it'll crack, and definitely not a good thing to crack the lower end unit. Here is the oil level port. Here is the fill and drain port here. It's important that you fill from this lower port because that helps push all the air up out of here when you're filling it with oil. There's a lot of pockets around the gears, and by pushing the oil from the bottom up, it pushes all that air out. If you have the bottom plug in and you fill from the top, sometimes it'll keep those air pockets in place. So always good to fill from the bottom. That's what it's there for. That's what it's meant to do. First step is to break loose the old port, and then we'll break loose the bottom drain and fill port. We want to keep this guy in because when we pull this out, that will prevent it from venting, and that will hold the oil in until we get that plug out all the way and we can get a bucket under there. I'm going to take the lower plug out. So you can see it's holding it pretty well. Now I'll take this out and the oil will start flowing. All right, we got oil flowing now. All right, that is all drained out. Sample the oil, make sure there's no metal shavings. Make sure there's no water. That is beautiful. We're gonna put the gear oil into the lower port, and then we're gonna squeeze until we see it coming out of the upper, and then we'll put the plug in to create a kind of a suction, prevent it from venting and draining out. All right, keep filling. All right, it's coming out. See those air bubbles? We can get those air bubbles out. Put this guy back on. Isn't too much. Tighten this down. I'm gonna get pretty snug. One thing you don't want to do though is you don't want this to suck back out, because if this sucks back out, you're gonna suck oil back down. And then what I do at the end, I just kind of top it off a little bit. Once you got the plugs back in, give it a wipe. Look for any leaks. Key points for replacing the lower end unit oil. You want to do it before winter, just in case you have water. You want to fill from the bottom, always, to make sure you push all the air pockets up. If you're using a tube like I am, once you get oil out of that level port there, make sure you don't let go of that tube or it's going to suck the oil down. You're going to think there's oil in there, but it's going to end up back in the tube of gear oil. When you're done filling from the bottom, you either got to be quick and put the bottom one back in, or you put the top one in. That'll prevent it from venting, and that'll buy you a little bit more time to put the bottom one in without all the oil rushing out. Overall, pretty simple. I would recommend investing in a pump. That way you can pump, see it coming out, keep pressure on there. If you got a pump, it'll stay down in position, keep pressure. There won't be any suction that you got to worry about. So overall, pretty simple. Now we're going to give it a start. Maybe you just need to get some gas through that carb. Maybe just needed to get some gas through that carb, maybe. I don't know. All I know is all the fuel lines were empty when I drained it. So I'm going to try it again this time to see if it'll start. First pull. Nope. Try one more time.
Got it.
Hey, buddy.
Are you still making a video?
Yeah. Hey! It's idling pretty good. It's idling a little bit better than it was, it seems like. Well, that's it. She's running. First pull after I got it started. Pretty pleased. We'll see now. Cold start, now that the carb's full of gas. Next time I cold start it, see how many pulls it takes. But overall, she's running. All right, we've got it out for the first time since the maintenance activities
and she's running great. I was worried with the whole issues I had when I tried to start it in the bucket, but man, she's doing great. Honestly, I think one of the biggest things is the prop edge filing, because performance has increased, and honestly, the spark plug and that prop edge filing are the two things that I think probably have the biggest impact on performance. But I was getting some cavitation issues at full RPM, but now I haven't had one issue at all day. So I'm planing out really well. Everything is going pretty good. Started on the third pole, starts on the first pole now that she's warmed up every single time. So pretty pleased. About 16 right now, 16 miles an hour. Appreciate the view. As always, have an amazing day on the water.